Okay, cool. So the session's recording. So what I'll do is we can just do a couple of introductions for myself and Nico, and then we'll kind of just go into why we're all here and what the purpose of the session is. So I'll start. So my name's Annabelle James. I work for Action Sustainability, which is the company who've developed the carbon footprint calculator, which is why we're here today. And also the company behind the Supply Chain Sustainability School, which some of you may be familiar with. And I'll be going through what the carbon footprint calculator is, how it works, and kind of what next steps are. But yes, I'll hand over to Nico from Octavius.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Sapunas. I'm the supply chain manager for Octavius Infrastructure. Like Annabelle said, so here we are to carbon footprint to talk about the carbon footprint calculator and why it's important to Octavius. So I would like first to give you an overview of Octavius carbon strategy. So we have set a carbon target to become net zero carbon, achieve net zero carbon by 2035, which is a very optimistic target, against the government objective, which is like to achieve it by 2050. In order to do that, we need to reduce not just only our scope 1 and 2 emissions, but also scope 3, which is our supply chain. So at the moment, we are, let's say, carbon neutral in the sense that because we offset all our carbon emissions, so we calculate our emissions every year and we offset them by, unfortunately, we have to pay someone to offset it, which we chose them very carefully. So they plant trees at different projects around the world, and we have evidence for that. But the most important is like we need to reduce our actual carbon emissions to achieve this net zero, because like zero is achieving net zero, not like offsetting it. So, like I said, so it's important that we get that the majority of being a main contractor and subcontracting all the works, it means that the majority of our emissions come from scope 3, which is our supply chain. And that's why we need to make sure that our supply chain is on board on this journey with us to reduce the net zero by 2035, but also meet their other requirements as well. And in order to do so, we use the carbon calculator. This is a very great tool for us, which help us to access the information from our supply chain, but and obviously then analyze it and take appropriate action and develop an action plan on how we plan to support our supply chain to reduce our carbon emissions. But also, it's a good tool for you to measure emissions, because we understand not all organizations have the in-house capabilities or the facility to employ someone to measure the carbon emissions. This tool, like Annabelle will show us today, is very straightforward on helping you measure emissions, and which obviously Annabelle will explain what are the other benefits it brings to your business apart from reporting to us. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Nico. Hopefully that kind of contextualizes why we're all here today. And just to kind of reiterate, thank you so much for joining the session. And we really appreciate your attendance today. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen and just go through the kind of slide deck for the session today, and then we'll kind of go through basically a bit of an agenda, and then the actual system itself. So just for an agenda, so we've had an introduction from Nicholas. I'll go into what the carbon footprint calculator actually is. And as we've kind of already covered, it is a hopefully very straightforward system that's really designed to make this process as easy as possible and to really streamline the process. I think that will become kind of apparent throughout the session. Then the main portion of the session, I'll go into the report itself. I'll show you what it looks like, how to fill out the report, how to create an account, that sort of thing. And then we'll have next steps at the end. So what actually do you need to do for this process? And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for Q&A session. If you do have any questions throughout, and we have got the Q&A function open on this session, so if you want to pop any questions in there as you think of them, and then I'll kind of go through them at the end, kind of one by one. So what actually is the carbon footprint calculator? So in a nutshell, it's an online platform to help you calculate your carbon emissions. But as Nico said, it's really designed to make it as streamlined and easy as possible. So you don't have to do any calculations yourself. All you're doing is entering kind of raw activity data into the system, and the system will then calculate the carbon emissions associated with that. So for example, if you use 100 litres of water, the system will then calculate what the carbon emissions are associated with 100 litres of water. So that's the kind of basic principle of the system. and it really just allows you to make this process as simple as possible. Um, and the key benefit for you is that you get your own personal dashboard and once you've submitted your report, and that'll allow you then to start looking at your data, including being able to see actually where are hotspots in your emissions and that sort of thing. And a key function of this is that you're doing one report once a year, and then you're actually apportioning or distributing a proportion of your emissions to your clients, such as Octavius, but also other clients as well. So what you really can do is submit one report and then apportion data to various clients in one go. So you're not having to do one report for one client, one for another. You can do it in one place. And we've got a lot of different people using the system. So as you'll see kind of later on, it's very likely that other clients of yours are also doing this exercise as well. So what are the top features? So I mean, the name does what's in the tin, really. It calculates carbon emissions. So it takes that raw activity data, so things like your fuel usage, water usage, electricity usage, etc., and calculates what the emissions for those activities are. And then the key kind of principle of it is that what I've referred to as apportionments. That's distributing carbon emissions to your clients, and that's based on revenue. So this report's going to be for 2024, and what you do is you calculate what percentage Octavius represented of your 2024 turnover, and then you'd apportion that percentage of your emissions to them. So, for example, you did, if Octavius represented 7.4% of your 2024 turnover, you'd apportion 7.4% of your emissions to Octavius. So hopefully that kind of makes sense as the basic principles of the system. As I said, I'll go into the actual report in a minute and hopefully start to make a little more sense. But really, just know that it's one report, and then you can kind of distribute um, emissions accordingly. If you're sitting here thinking that's all well and good, but we've already actually calculated our emissions, that's also completely fine. We actually have two forms of the report. We've got the full form report, which is that raw data, but we also have a simplified report where you can actually just input your carbon emissions in terms of scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 if you've already calculated that separately, and then just put a company information and then just apportion to Octavius and you're done. So either way, depending on where you kind of are this process, the system designed to be able to kind of meet everyone's needs and suit everyone. And as well, to kind of really reduce that reporting burden, we're only asking you to do one report once per year, so you don't have to worry about doing a monthly submission, remembering to do that. It's just one report for your company's data overall once a year, and then you portion to various clients. And as I said before, you then get your own dashboards with different graphs and different things, which we'll go through to actually start looking at your data once you've submitted it as well. So what are the top benefits of the carbon footprint calculator? So one of the main things is it does really streamline that carbon reporting process. And as Nicholas said, it's really designed to simplify and make it as straightforward and easy to do as possible. We'll go into the report in a minute, but you'll see that it's in a kind of tab format across the top. It's laid out very clearly, and it's really clear kind of what information you need to get and that sort of thing. And crucially, it's free for you to use as well. So it's funded by Octavius and other clients, and so that their supply chains, such as you, can actually then use that for free. And as it's only one report once per year, and then that can be kind of spread out across your clients, it really does help reduce the reporting burden. And by having your own personal dashboards, that means actually you can look at your data in detail and actually potentially start taking data-driven actions as well, once you kind of know what your emissions are. And just if you're kind of thinking, what's the point of this? It really is part of a much bigger picture. So there are currently over 2,000 suppliers like you who are using the system for the various clients, and that number is just growing and growing kind of by the day. So it's really part of a bigger picture. There's a lot of companies asking their supply chains to do this. This is just a kind of handful on the screen here, as you can see, including Octavius. And so, you may recognize the names up here. Maybe you've got projects with them too. So this is a bigger piece and kind of a lot of momentum behind this calculator. So I think it's really kind of important to engage with it and get ahead of the curve and just kind of get stuck in with this process. So what I'll do now is I will go through a kind of bit of a demo of the actual system itself, what the report actually looks like, just so you can kind of get a feel for what you're actually going to be asked to do. So I'll just share my screen again. So yeah, perfect. So this is what the reporting interface looks like. So when you first log in, you'll be taken straight here. What I will do is I will show you afterwards actually how to register, and also in the follow-up email that I'll send out, I'll include the slide deck and the meeting recording, and also just some instructions of how to register. But essentially, it's just like registering for anything else. It's very straightforward. So the report is broken down into 4 steps. We've got step 1, which is selecting the reporting period and whether you already know your emissions or not. So to reiterate, Octavius would like you to report your 2024 data, and so you click 2024 in the drop-down. If this obviously says the 1st of January to 31st December, if it's going to be difficult for you to get data within that parameter, you can report in line with whatever year kind of makes sense to you. So a very common one we see is actually reporting in line with the financial year rather than the calendar year. So that would be April 2024 to March 2025. We see that very commonly. That's completely fine, as long as the year you're kind of reporting in, covers 2024, the majority of that. That's completely fine. And just that, when you come to this report next year, as long as this report ends and the next report picks up, this one leaves off, that's completely fine. But yeah, pick 2024. And then for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to show you the full form report. But if we have time at the end, I'll show you the simplified one as well. But essentially, it's just a very short version where you just enter your scopes 1, 2, and 3, and a bit of company information. So once you click this, you click save, and then that'll change to green. And the second step is just a very high-level company information, such as your kind of locations and sectors and that sort of thing. And then the step 3 is the kind of main part of the report. So when you log onto this, basically you'll have a lot of tabs across the top. All of them will have this red exclamation mark because you haven't interacted with them yet. And as you start to enter things into the system, then they'll go to these kind of amber triangles. And I was playing around with this beforehand. I was playing with some of the tabs, so that's why they've kind of gone to that amber colour. What I'll do is I'll go through this first transport tab in a little more detail just to kind of show you tips and tricks as how to navigate the report, and then the remaining tabs we'll just go through a little more quickly in the interest of time. And also I appreciate as well that this is a lot of tabs. It looks quite overwhelming, but actually it's broken down like that just to make it really clear and straightforward what information you need to collect, and just kind of really lay it out for you. And also as well, and before I actually get into kind of the detail more, this is basically aligned with the greenhouse gas protocols, kind of recognised way of measuring your carbon emissions. But if you can't get all this data this year, obviously the more data you report, the better, and the more full the picture will be. But don't let gaps in your data prevent you from submitting your report at all, because we need to start somewhere, and some data is better than none. And what we kind of see with some organisations, they really use this as a kind of blueprint of what data they actually can start collecting and that they aren't currently, to kind of more fully measure their carbon footprint. So for example, if you currently don't have a record of your waste production, that's an area you could start looking at. Okay, how could we start kind of collecting that information so we can then report this on an annual basis? So in terms of the transport tab, it's broken down into 2 sections. We've got company transport and then we've got third-party transport. Two differences between this: basically, company transport is any transportation in vehicles directly owned or controlled by your organisation. So that would be things like company vans or company cars, that sort of thing. And a third party is basically privately owned vehicles, things like employee commuting and that sort of thing. If at any point during the report you are unsure about a section, the subheadings all have kind of little eye icons next to them with kind of some more information about actually what's included in that section, what's not included, and kind of what to do for that section. So I'd really invite you to kind of have a look through the report and just kind of see what your section needs. We also do have a very comprehensive kind of carbon calculator guide as well, which I'll attach to the follow-up email, which basically really goes into more detail about kind of what the tabs are, what carbon reporting actually is in a very fundamental way, then also things about where to get different information from for the different tabs and that sort of thing, which might be quite a useful resource for you. So kind of main top tips with the calculator: first of all, always check the units. So this tab, you've got kind of, you can change the unit, but for the rest of the tabs, they are static. And what the request is, if, for example, in the fossil fuels tab, you've got, I don't know, natural gas in a different unit to kilowatt hours, that you convert it before entering it into the system so that you're not misentering it. Because what we see is, for example, with propane, if you had that in tons and then you entered it in the system and it's actually kilograms, you're going to massively underrepresent the amount of propane you've used. So just always check the units, and is in a different unit, just use online calculator before plugging it into the tool. And then the second thing is basically that if a section is not relevant to you, you've got an NA button here. So don't, rather than clicking 0, just click NA if it's not relevant. If you don't have any company-owned petrol vans, just click NA. That's completely fine. And then you'll see here that we've got kind of extra sections. So, for example, for the depot transport, there's other vehicle types, and this is just so that you can make the dashboard a little bit more clear. But there's lots of other types. There's like electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, taxis, motorbikes, train travel, ferry travel, international and domestic air travel. There's quite a lot of different transportation types that you can kind of record as part of this section. And what you can do as well for the company and vehicle section is if you do have, you don't have this data in miles, but you do have it in kind of in litres of fuel, you can enter that in here instead. But what we say is just to only do in one section. Don't fill out this section in miles and this section in litres, just do one or the other because you don't want to double count that data. And I think just more generally with the report auto saves, so you don't have to worry about saving the report if you want to kind of dip in and out of it, or if you close the tab accidentally, it won't go anywhere. You can just log back in and everything you've entered will stay there. And there's no limit on the number of colleagues that you have access to this report. So if you want to have a few people kind of filling out different parts of the data, that's completely fine. But equally, if you want to have just one person doing the data, that's also fine. Really, it's up to you how best is going to work for you as an organization. Please feel free to do that. It's really designed to be flexible and kind of do what you need it to do. And I think this leads on quite nicely as well to my next point, which is obviously kind of a lot of this data is primary data, but you might not necessarily have primary exact data for all of these data points. And what you can do, it's a valid way of doing it, is to actually kind of calculate proxy data instead of that primary data. So for example, if you've got, rather than sending out some sort of, I thought to say server, but or some sort of like document where you want to be actually recording the exact number of miles that each employee is commuted to and from the workplace in a year. Obviously, that is quite extreme. If you want to do that, that's completely fine. But that example, you could do what we call proxy data. So, for example, if you've got, say, 50 employees with a petrol car, and on average, each employee lives 10 miles from the workplace, they go into the office 5 days a week, so on average, traveling 100 miles per week. That's then 5,000? Yeah, 5,000 miles, sorry, quick maths, per week that all of your employees are commuting. So over the year, you can kind of scale that up. So what you can do is kind of do those calculations. And what I'd really recommend is within the comment section, anything like that, just make a note of it, just so you know how you've got to that number, so you can kind of replicate that methodology kind of in subsequent years when you're doing this reporting exercise. And just generally speaking, I think in terms of this report, I think really utilize the comment section because it's really there for your benefit, just for you to make any notes about anything, or if you want to have any context behind the data or anything like that, I'd really kind of make use of that and support you with your process. And as well with the comment section, if you are reporting with a year that's different to the calendar year, just pop that in the comment box here, just so that you know what year you've done, and also then we know what year that this is from. And once you've kind of filled out all the sections, I'm just going to mark them NA just for now. But once you've kind of complete the sections, you can then mark the section as complete, and then you'll see that that tab changes to a green tick. And in order to be able to submit the report, you'll need to have marked all the sections complete and have all the sections kind of green across the top. So I know it's quite a lot of information. I think what I'd really recommend is after the session, just to, if you haven't already, register for an account and have a look at this in your own time, just to familiarize yourself with the system, what it looks like, what sort of information is asked for. And we're on hand to kind of answer any questions and support you with the process as well. So don't feel like you're going to be completely alone with this. And we're very much here to support and encourage you to report. So as I said, I'll go through the other tabs, but just in a bit less detail. I appreciate it's a Wednesday afternoon, don't want to send everyone to sleep. And then we'll kind of actually go into the dashboard and then what's kind of next. So we have a fossil fuel section. So there's kind of plant and equipment and that sort of thing. Again, just really important to check the units in this section to make sure that the fuel that you've got is in the correct unit. And with fugitive emissions, this is emissions from refrigerants. If you don't have any refrigerants, you won't have any of this. But if you do, just report it here. If not, click no. And the electricity section is just grid electricity usage. And then they do have the option to enter whether you've got any renewable energy, and also whether you generate any renewable energy as well. So you've got those options to kind of enter those amounts there as well, if that's applicable to you. Then we have a material section, which for a lot of you probably will be very relevant. I know we've got a lot of the construction sector. We've got a lot of kind of construction contractors and suppliers on this call. So with this section, it's broken down into two bits. We've got kind of materials, like from raw materials, and then kind of the data handling of materials. So the good, I guess, we think about this, if you were making bricks or manufacturing bricks, you'd put that in the first section. If you were laying the bricks to build, a building, that'd be in the second section. So that's just that differentiation, just to make sure you put that in the correct part. And within this, you've got a drop-down list of slightly different building options, including low carbon concrete. So if you have made the switch from regular concrete to low carbon concrete, you can record that here, and that'll then be reflected in your kind of overall emissions will be lower by using low carbon concrete. And the same with steel as well. We've also got a low carbon steel option as well. So just kind of basically record all the materials that you've used. And just to clarify as well, to reiterate, this is not just for projects with Octavius, this is for projects across your organisation for 2024. So as a whole, so you don't have to try and work out project specific information, it's just everything kind of overall. Then we have the waste section. So this is broken down into different types of waste, and then within that, different destinations for that waste. So basically, you can then just calculate those emissions based on those options. Then we have water, which is my personal favourite tab because it's only one question, just litres of water. So you just put that in, hopefully a bit more straightforward. And then we've got a fairly new addition, which was a home working tab. So we added this with the kind of increased with the number of employees who are working from home, be part-time or full-time, myself included. So with this, it's just, again, probably the best way to get this data, to see that kind of proxy data, kind of approximating the number of employees you've got working from home, the average number of days a week they work in the office, and the kind of number of employees and the number of hours they work. So basically, you can kind of do, again, move that approximation, probably quite applicable to this section. Again, with anything like that, just put your methodology in the comment section, and that's no problem. Then we have the other emissions section. So this is really just a bit of an other or miscellaneous tab. This is just if you've got anything that the carbon emissions associated with it that you want to record, put it in here. If you do click yes to that first question where you do know your emissions, the page will refresh and you'll basically have a report, which essentially these last three tabs is the only thing you have to fill out. I'll show you that afterwards actually, but basically you just enter your scope 1, 2, 3 directly in, apportion your clients, and then you're done. Then we've just got a policies and strategies tab. So with this section, if you haven't got any carbon reduction strategies, or you haven't set science-based targets, or you're not, say, ISO 14001 accredited, that's completely fine. You're not going to be penalised for not having anything in the section. But it's just if you are, for example, if you have set science-based targets, select yes, upload your documentation and just show off what you've done to your clients, such as Octavius, to really kind of demonstrate your commitment to sustainability, what you're doing as part of your operations. But as I said, you're not going to be penalised if you don't have anything to kind of add to this section. And then the final tab is a basically company information. So it's your turnover and your number of full-time equivalent employees. At this point, there sometimes is some concern about sharing turnover. So I really want to reiterate that the only people who will see your full turnover will be me and any of my colleagues, and we will not be disclosing that information to anyone else. It's completely confidential. The reason that question's in there is because in your dashboards, it'll then calculate a normalised figure for you. So you'll be able to see your emissions per £1 million of turnover. And why that's really useful is if you're then doing this year on year and say, hopefully, your business's turnover is increasing, in theory, your carbon emissions, if your company is growing, your carbon emissions will grow alongside that. But that normalized figure's there, so you can actually see relative to increase in turnover or kind of business growth, what direction our emissions are going in. So even if, say, your business doubled over the next 3 years, but actually your carbon emissions only went up 25%, that relative figure, the emissions per £1 million of turnover, would actually go down. So that's why it's really important to enter that figure, because you can actually then see over time what direction our emissions going in, taking into consideration business growth. And the same with the full-time employees as well. And that goes to this full report as well. That Nico, for example, or different clients, they won't see this full report. They'll only see the sliver that you said, yep, that relates to work with Octavius. So say Octavius with 10% of your turnover for 2024, so Nicholas would only see 10% of your report, but he wouldn't know that that's 10%. So he'd just see it'd be an undefined sliver. It could be 1%, it could be 50%. But that's the only part that they'll kind of see. So you don't have to worry about sharing any information with kind of clients that's sensitive, and they'll only see like a small portion of it, and won't know what portion that is. Once you've completed this section will go green. Obviously, I haven't finished all the tabs, so it won't be. And then we'll go into step 4, which is that apportionment section. So what this is basically where you can apportion based on revenue to your clients. So you've got a selection of clients here, including Octavius, and there's kind of some more down here as well. And basically, you calculate the percentage that they represent of your turnover in 2024. Do it to as many decimal figures as you know you'd like. The more accurate, the better. And obviously, the request here is coming from Octavius, but you may see other clients of yours in this drop-down list and up here. If you do, you know, obviously apportion to them as well, because if they haven't already asked you to report this information, it's very likely that they will be reaching out to you to do so. And even if they don't reach out for you to do so, it's a really good way to kind of proactively show that you're taking sustainability really seriously and that you're proactively reporting your carbon emissions and actually reporting to your clients without being prompted, which you know is really viewed upon really favourably with clients. So I just recommend just go in and apportion to anyone you've worked with in 2024 in one go. If you don't do that and someone does, for example, if Cadent then reach out in a month's time and ask you to do this, or a couple of months' time, you can go back into your report and edit the apportionment and add them. But I would just really say just to do it in one go, because it then just saves the admin of going back in and kind of editing anything. But you can do that if needed. Say for example, Octavius, if I was to apportion 1.56% and then add, and then once you've added everyone to the bottom here, you click save, and then this section will then refresh. And then you'll be able to kind of, that'll go to the green tick. Obviously, I can't submit my report because I haven't completed the 2 interim steps, but when you did, then it would refresh and take you to your dashboard. So that's the report in itself. I appreciate we've gone through that quite quickly. If you have got any questions, as I said, I'll kind of go through those at the end. So I've got a couple of questions actually here. So I've registered for the tool, but I'm waiting access permission, have been for a while. When can I expect it to be granted? If you just want to put your company name in the comments section or the chat, or if you prefer to email separately, I can go in and manually approve your access. That's no problem. And yes, all the data submitted is company-wide, not just related to Octavius. That's correct. So in terms of in the dashboard, and when you submit your report, you'll then be taken to this page, and basically it's just a kind of summary of everything. So this is a test account. So if some of the data looks a bit random, it's because I made it up, but it's just really for demo purposes. So you can see you've got kind of broken down by scope, you've got total emissions, and then you've got some kind of graphs down here showing your total emissions, but also per £1 million of turnover. So that's that normalised figure I discussed. And then probably the most useful part and interesting part from your perspective will be the analyze hotspots. So this is where you can see, click on this and you can see your total emissions, your emissions per £1 million of turnover. You can view emissions by scope, and then also by activity as well. So you can see here, and this is the part that I think could be really interesting, or the most interesting to you, is you'll be able to break down of actually within our operations, where are our emissions coming from, where are the hotspots. So you can see in this fictitious example that the company transport is the biggest contributor to the emissions. So you can see here the bars. And what you can do as well is you can kind of click on several of these tiles and actually compare values. So for example, if you wanted to compare emissions from waste versus transmission and distribution, for example, you can click on those and compare the bars here. Or if you wanted to have a look at your emissions from water versus your emissions from fossil fuel, for example. You can click on those two bars to compare them, relatively speaking. And the more years you've submitted data for, the more bars you'll have here. So if you haven't done this before, you'll have one bar, but if you've done this last year or year before, then you can kind of get that year on year information. And with this page as well, it's all exportable. So if you want to kind of export things, you go to dashboard menu up here, and then you can either export the inputs, that's the direct data you inputted into the report. You can then export that into an Excel format, and you can export the indicators. That's basically these calculations in the dashboard, including the scopes as well. So if you want to use that for any reports for yourself or to do anything internally, and this data is yours to use however you see fit. So that's kind of the system in a nutshell. If you do have any questions while doing it, we've got kind of a few avenues you can kind of go down to get support. So the first one is, you may have seen this pop up earlier, we've got a chat bot, so you can click on this and basically ask any questions here. If the chatbot can't answer your question, it'll be forwarded to our support team, and then they'll kind of support you directly as well. This is kind of here for any quick questions about things about the system or whatever. You can kind of try that there. We also have a user guide as well, and I'll actually show you that as well as how to register now, just so you've kind of got that. With that user guide as well, I will attach that to the follow-up email as well, so you've got that easily accessible. So this is the landing page. If you want any more information, just go to measure your own emissions. And this basically has quite a lot of resources, including a short form video for each tab in the report. So if you don't want to sit through this full session again and you just want to think, how do I know about X or Y? Say, for example, fossil fuels. I can't remember the fossil fuel section. You can just watch this short form video to support you with that section specifically, rather than sitting through this full section. And then if you scroll down at the bottom, this is where we've got that carbon calculator guide. So this is that resource that I referred to before that's really comprehensive. If you have got questions or you want to know a bit more about this, or just kind of, you want a bit more, I'd really invite you to have a look at this. As I said, I'll attach this as a PDF to the email. But that's a really good resource, just kind of everything in one place to support you with this process. And then we also do have info@sustainabilitytool.com, which again, I'll put in that follow-up email. That's our support team, and that's a really regularly monitored inbox that's there to support you and kind of answer questions that you have to help you with the reporting process as well. So that's kind of another resource for you. And in terms of registering, basically you go to create a supplier account, you enter your first name, your surname, your company email address, create a password, and then just make sure when you enter your company name that you enter it in full. So try to avoid any abbreviations, just so that we can locate your account easily, and so can Octavius. And there's just a basic captcha check. And then if when you register, someone else in your organization has already created an account, you'll have the opportunity to join their account rather than creating your own. So you can do that as well there. And alternatively, if you have already created an account and you want colleagues added, you can contact that the info at helpline, and they'll be able to kind of manually add those email addresses for you, so they can then be granted access to the account. So kind of either way, whatever works best for you. So what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'll just kind of get up the PowerPoint and just kind of go through what next, what actually do you need to know, what do you need to do. So what I'll do, I've just put that info at email address as well into hopefully to the Q&A as well. So you've got that there if you want to activate your account. But yeah, so in terms of next steps, let me just share my screen here. So basically, hopefully pretty straightforward. Next steps are to firstly register for an account. I'd really recommend, if you haven't done so already, do it after the session while you remember, just so then you can go in and actually start familiarising yourself with the report, with the system. What does it look like? What do we need to collect? It's just kind of easier to do. And then once you've got your account, you can then start thinking about what you actually need to start gathering and where you might be able to get your data from and that sort of thing. And then the kind of final step is then actually fill out your data and submit your report, making sure to apportion to Octavius in the process. So important information. So just to reiterate, Octavius would like you to submit your 2024 data, and the deadline for this is the 30th of June 2025. So you have got kind of just under 3 months to do this, so you have got plenty of time. But I would kind of, recommend that you do register and start collecting now, so that you've got plenty of time to meet that deadline, and kind of get everything in on time. So that's kind of everything in terms of the system, and kind of what's next really. I'm not sure, Nicholas, if you've got anything to add to that.
Not really. I just want to encourage everyone to submit this information, but the deadline, like Annabelle says, which is 30th of June, 2025. So if you need any support, you can just contact me as well, and I can help you. Information, but like Annabelle says, like better to do it yourself. There's a lot of guidance out there how to do it, and also, you, like I said, it's submit the information across your company wide, and then just allocate a proportionate that to Octavius and to the other contractors. So it's really important that we collect this information. Will really be helpful to us and obviously to you as well.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we really appreciate taking the time today to join this. And this is really here to support you with this process, not something that Nicholas sitting here saying you need to do this. It is really something that is in your best interest to do, as well as for Octavius, because not only is it obviously good for them to report their supply chain emissions, but actually for you to know your company's emissions is something that's becoming increasingly requested by clients. And I know we has begun to start being kind of mentioned in the tendering process as well, that some companies are starting to consider whether suppliers are reporting their carbon emissions and taking sustainability seriously. So I think just to kind of future-proof the organisation, I'd really recommend that you kind of dive into this and actually just get ahead of the curve and actually take this seriously. Unfortunately, it's not going anywhere. This is going to be something that's become more and more requested by more and more clients. So I think it's just something that if it's not now, it'll be in 6 months' time or a year's time. So you might as well do it now, so you know what to do when the time comes. You absolutely, mandated to do it.
Just to add, Annabelle, can we quickly show them how to submit if they know their CO2 emissions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you. I'll get that up now. Thank you. I knew I'd forgotten something. That was it. Perfect. Just give me 30 seconds while I close the I close my window by accident. But don't worry, if you do that when you're doing your report, it will auto save. So you don't need to no need to worry. And I do that more often than I'd care to admit, but it's easily done. But as Nico said, basically you can tailor it. So if you have got your emissions, you can enter that directly. So if I share my screen, so if you click yes to this question here, so do you already know your company's organization's emissions? You click yes, you click save, and then the rest of the steps are exactly the same. But the difference is that then this step 3 is the shorter version of the report. So basically you enter your scope 1 emissions, your scope 2, and there's tons of carbon equivalent. And then the scope 3 section, it is broken down into the 15 categories of scope 3. If you only know your scope 3 as a lump number, you can just enter that here, and then that'll kind of add up there. But if you do know the breakdown, put that in. And then you have to kind of say whether it was audited or independently verified here as well. And if yes, you can just put kind of what third party audited that data. And then the policies and strategies and the company information is exactly the same as the other section. The apportionment works exactly the same. It's just simply that the actual report is a lot shorter. So if you've already done that, it'll just be, take you under 10 minutes to do the report. It's just a case of plugging the numbers in and submitting and apportioning to Octavius. So hopefully, if that does apply to any of you, that makes sense and it's very straightforward to do. And that just means then that both Octavius and other clients as well, who you kind of have projects with, kind of then know that you're reporting and have that data kind of all in one place, which is important. So if you've got any more questions, we've got about 15 minutes now left. Feel free to put them in the Q&A section, or in the chat function as well. Now's kind of your opportunity to ask any questions. Obviously, if we don't use all the time, we won't make everyone sit here in silence for only 10 minutes. But if you've got any, feel free to ask Nico or anything while we're on the call. We're here to answer your questions and support. Haven't got any further questions in so far, so either I'll take that as I explained everything absolutely perfectly, or everyone's more confused than they did when they start. But I think I'll go with the first option. Or go to the question. So Techie, I missed the beginning of the talk. Could you let me know if this tool is linked directly to Supply Chain Sustainability School? So the login will be different because it's kind of the reporting platform, but we are the same company. So you'll need to create a separate account for the carbon reporting aspect, but you can use the same email address, same company name, to then do that reporting. So yes and no, but the login's different. So I guess essentially not directly linked. But it's fairly straightforward to register. Yes, hopefully that answers your question. What I will do actually is I'll put the just answer your question, the link to register. I'll need to exit my PowerPoint and I'll just put that to answer your question, just so that you've got that there. So has anyone got any further questions about registering, about the reporting deadline, about how to get the data, etc.? If not, we can wrap up early. We'll give it a few more minutes. But yeah, don't need to stay on if that's kind of all questions answered. Yes, so the support videos are on the landing page. So what I'll do is I'll put that link to that page just to answer your question. But yeah, it's basically the carbon footprint calculator website. They can be found there. So
I just want to mention on that what you mentioned earlier about like customers requiring our supply chain to how check or even pre-qualify them on how they measure carbon emissions. I just want to say that obviously like we are here because we want our supply chain to you to measure carbon emissions for your own benefit as well. But adding to what Annabelle said, we will be looking like to let's say classifying the suppliers, in Octavius, like like to prefer. So we don't call preferred strategic, but we call it some, let's say, silver, gold supplier, whatever the classification will be. But and carbon reporting is one of the criteria. So to the and in general your carbon strategy. So depending on how advanced your own carbon strategy to achieve net zero, the higher you get in this classification. So it's really important. Like this is a great first step that puts you in a very good position for what we expect as Octavius.
yeah, and I think that's kind of something that's been kind of echoed with other clients as well. That's something that's becoming more and more kind of commonplace, that taking steps to start measuring your carbon emissions, amongst other things, is just really important. In, as kind of Octavius said, putting you in a better position in terms of Octavius' supply chain. And as I said, like, it's a free platform, so the barrier for entry is really low, and it's really designed just to make it as easy and accessible as possible to start doing this, to start kind of taking steps as an organisation. Okay, amazing. Have you got any further questions? If you prefer to answer your question as well, I think you may be able to request to speak, though I'm not sure about the settings of the session. But if you want to put anything in the chat as well, please feel free, or the Q&A section. I think we've answered everything in the Q&A so far. I've had no kind of question in the chat functionality, so I'll give it until another minute or so, and then if not, we can hop off for next meetings and the rest of the afternoon. Okay, I'll take that as no more questions. But just to reiterate, thank you so much for attending. And what's your Nick, if you want to kind of say any closing words?
No, like you said, I would say thank you for that. Thank you for attending. So it's really important that you're very supportive. So this shows that you're interested in this. So please make sure that you send me the information. Also, there will be follow-up communication the coming months. So the deadline is 30th of June, but I'll be in touch with you in between just to make sure that we get this submitted, and so we can all benefit from this.
Amazing, thank you so much. And just to reiterate, you'll receive this recording, the slide deck, the follow-up information after this. I'll send that out this afternoon. So if any colleagues can join, feel free to forward that to them so they've got access to that material. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a lovely rest of your afternoon. And this won't be the last time you hear from us. So please do reach out if you do have any questions or require any support in any way. But yeah, thanks so much.